The snake lay still and considered what had happened. During the intermissions in the wind, the strategic advantage of his elevated resting position in the thick wood was apparent. He clearly heard the man with the box sneaking to the space vehicle's landing spot, followed by a strong, fast noise and the creatures clinking in their attempts to escape. It was the man's first box. The guy from the hardware store helped him calculate and cut the woods in the right sizes. When the guy asked what the box was for, he mumbled something about a television utility. What else could he say? He thought to himself, there isn't a more masculine action than building a box. The accurately sawed wood was flexible, and he was forced to be intimate with the boards in the gluing stage, leaning with all his weight and clipping them to each other, arranging himself in strange positions to fend off stubborn rounding of edges. And then the screws, their confident penetration, the material's irresistible submission, or sometimes its sneering revenge when one, too close to the edge, breaks through the side, injuring the wood and irrecoverably damaging the board's purchased perfection. The inside of the box, which turned out to be heavier than expected, he cushioned with an old sack. He then dragged it to the wood not far from where he had seen the creatures for the first time, performing what looked like an early morning emergency landing onto the dew-covered grass. Like everyone, he had grown used to imagining aliens in human size or bigger. It took some time until he understood what he was watching. He couldn't think of anyone who would believe him, even enough to be persuaded to come and see for themselves. He wondered who you should inform of such an event, which authority, and whether there was an official procedure for reporting unidentified flying objects driven by creatures the size of grasshoppers that move like a fragile construction of mucus-covered, honey-colored needles spreading tiny flare-ups around themselves. He needed more time to decide what to do. They were as light as foam and emitted shiny warmth through the wood, but he hadn't expected their forced delivery into the box to be so violent. He hadn't foreseen the feeling of self-loathing that swept through him alongside the cold sweat of excitement and the enhanced pulse when he carried the box on his shoulder toward the edge of the wood. Worse still, Since he had never stood next to creatures like these, he couldn't have predicted the telepathic humming or interpret it in a calming way. The rising waves of interskull stimulus, like a cognitive nausea, that had a distorting effect on the hearing and made his accelerated breathing sound like beast grunts. He fidgeted a few meters further before he realized that he must remove the box from near his head, dropped it to the ground, and collapsed into a bedding of dirt and pine needles. It helped. The pressure started evaporating. But then another darting layer appeared below it, less violent but just as domineering. An unfamiliar internal voice, like uncontrollable dubbing, appeared exactly where the one he always talked to himself with usually resided. More than talking, screaming, or humming, the alien voice flickered, generating multidimensional chaos in his head, burning itself fanatically into his being, launching dense verbal sequences to the center of his consciousness, with words blinking and disappearing, recharging again and again, and leaping repeatedly onto the inflamed stage that took over his brain. Desolate. 10th that had passed. Deployment in the space of the barefoot. Ancient information highlights. Nutritious labor in the desert. Noisy body clings to the side of the trench. He fell asleep exhausted, wide-mouthed, fetus positioned, his curls on the snake's tail, the box at his feet. When he woke up, he knew all there was to know about caring for the creatures, and that this is his calling.
How can evil be over? No, no, no. When you get in fight from even your closest brother. Fire, fire, Lord. Fire, I guess you're burning flame. Fire, fire, Lord. Fire, I guess you're burning flame now. Some people coming with some wicked intention. Watch for them from all direction. But the Father got a different solution. For every action, there's a reaction. Fire, fire, Lord. Fire, I guess you're burning flame. Fire, fire, Lord. Fire, I guess you're burning flame now. Some people coming with some wicked intention. Enough disguise and false representation. Trying to get closer than long-time acquaintance. But Father will help me to keep my distance. Though they may try